John McMullen over at 97.3 ESPN.com. He's got more details on the Fletcher Cox deal. And, John, wow, I've got to be honest, I'm pretty shocked at the amount of money. I mean, I thought he was going to get paid, but $60+ million. He's the highest, $63 million guaranteed, the most ever for a non-quarterback in NFL history. Could you have predicted that?
Well, I knew he was going to be between 50 and 60, and that's that argument between guaranteed and fully guaranteed and all that nonsense. But just know that Fletcher got a heck of a lot of money. Everybody knew he was going to get a heck of a lot of money. So whether he's ahead of Ndamukong Suh or behind him, depending on sort of how you want to cook the books, the bottom line is he was always going to get this level of contract. And a lot of it has to do with timing. And now you'll see it, whether it's K'Wan Short in Carolina, whether it's Von Miller in Denver, Mo Wilkerson in New York. They're the next in line for these big kind of deals for the defensive front. And you're going to see Fletcher Cox be the measuring stick, and that's just the nature of it. When you have good players, you have to pay for them. And Howie Roseman, by the way, has been up front about that since he's taken over. He said time and time again, every move we have made in this offseason is with Fletcher in mind. In other words, we're always going to have room for him. We're always going to sign him. And it finally came to fruition yesterday.
Yeah, now, all right, so he gets paid big time, $63 million, the 103, 6-year extension, and everybody's all happy now. But does this has to raise a level of expectations, right? You can't just be a Pro Bowl player. You need to be an all-pro player.
Yeah, it does. There's no question about it. And the whole off season, I think, has raised the expectations of people around the country with the Eagles. And you mentioned yesterday with ESPN saying that a top 5 level roster. When you spend this kind of money, and since Howie Roseman has been back from his 1-year exile, the Eagles have spent more money than any other team in professional football, and it's not close. Everyone talks about the Giants spending like drunken sailors in free agency. Heck, the Eagles, they did it in a different fashion. They took care of their own, but they've spent almost twice as much money as the New York Giants. So it's going to be interesting because Howie believes in identifying the core and taking care of those guys, and that's what he's done. But I still look at this organization and say, it's all about the quarterback. They got to get Carson Wentz up to speed. And if he doesn't get up to speed, if he's not a success, this is going to be a failure. If he is, this team's going to be set up for a lot of good seasons.
John, I'm curious about the timing of the Cox deal a little bit, too, because there's a lot of people that say that they could have franchise tagged him. Would that have made more sense to you, or do you think that this was the right time to make this deal, and for so much?
No, I think this is the right time. This is generally, again, how the NFL does business. He was entering his final year of his rookie deal with the team option, and that's generally when you start to renegotiate, start to get the long-term deals done with guys who really, really play well, and Fletcher's in that category. You saw it last week in Minnesota with Harrison Smith, same situation. He signed a big-time extension that made him the highest paid safety in football. This is just the business of the NFL. This is how contracts are done. It was Fletcher's turn. It's about timing, and this was the time to get it done, and the Eagles did it, and he's their best player. So you have to pay for good players in this league.
So with all the moves, does the deal get done if Chip is still in charge?
Yeah, I do. I believe it gets done. There is no question that Chip had a ton of respect for Fletcher as well. And the way of doing contracts as far as the timing, that doesn't change no matter how he's in charge or Chip's in charge. So the timing aspect of it would have been the same. The question is, would have these other deals gotten done? That's what you have to answer. As far as getting Zach Ertz and people like that, Lane Johnson done before they had to, I'm not sure those would have gotten done, but this one would have.
Right, because the genius of this, I don't know if that's the right word, but the maneuverability of him to fit this contract in after he got all those other guys. You wonder if Chip could have figured out a way to get all those guys fit in and Fletcher Cox with this big deal. And I wonder, at the top of the show, John, if Jim Schwartz isn't the guy here, do they pay him this kind of money? Does Jim Schwartz convince them that you got a guy here that will be worth this money in my defense?
Well, I think it helped Fletcher more than anything else, because I think his side, and kind of looked at, now that you have Jim Schwartz, look at what he's done with 3 techniques in his previous stops, dating back all the way back to Tennessee with Albert Haynesworth and Dominican Sue and Marcel Darius. He's done it time and time and time again with these types of players. So I think it complicated things more from the perspective of Fletcher kind of knew if worse comes to worse, he could have played this season at the nearly $8 million he would have gotten. And then all of a sudden, if he played at the level that most people expect, an even bigger payday, as hard as that is to imagine, would have been on the docket. Because when you talk about the timing then, you would have had to franchise Fletcher Cox. K'Wan Short by that point is probably done with a huge money deal. Von Miller's probably done with a huge money deal. Wilkerson's probably done with a huge money deal. And these things never come down. They always go up with the best players. So I think, if anything, if he would have stayed healthy this year, sort of bet on himself, played at a similar level to last year under Jim Schwartz in a new scheme, I think it would have been a bigger deal.
So, John, this signing of Fletcher Cox, probably the climax to a big offseason by Howie Roseman. How would you grade Howie Roseman's move now that all his moves, now that you have Fletcher Cox as the latest?
Well, I think Howie, his strength is well documented. He is very good at contracts, and even this deal, as outrageous as it looks on paper, and as absurd and gaudy the money figures look to the casual fan, this isn't really going to hurt the Philadelphia Eagles as far as the salary cap standpoint in the coming years. It's generally what you pay good players, and then that's Howie's strength, is sort of figuring out the entire puzzle and working contracts. And I think he's done that beautifully since he's been back. The issues with him remain are picking the players. We have to see how Brandon Brooks fits in, if he becomes a star player. If Rodney McLeod is a better safety than even people predict. If Carson Wentz, obviously, first and foremost, is the biggest, but even Isaac Seumalo and Wendell Smallwood, draft picks like that, those are the things you have to grade Howie Roseman on, because those are the issues he's had in the past, and it's just too early to say if he's made the right decisions talent-wise. But he'll always, I constantly tell Mike, Howie doesn't sign bad contracts, and even this isn't a bad contract for the Philadelphia Eagles.
And what kind of message, John, do you think it sends to the fan base? Because this is a fan base that remembers guys like Brian Dawkins that walked, or Reggie White that walked. And here, I mean, I'm not saying that Cox is Brian Dawkins or Reggie White, but here's a guy that was poised to be.
He better play at that level.
Yeah. I mean, what kind of message does that send to the fan base?
Well, I think it sends I think more so it sends a message to the locker room. If you succeed, if you play at a high level, you're going to be rewarded. I think that's the more important aspect. But, yeah, I mean, if you're a fan of the Philadelphia Eagles, the fact that Fletcher Cox, your best player, is under contract for 6 more years. Another thing we always laugh about the Chip Kelly regime and people buying jerseys and how things kind of turned over constantly. Well, now you got Fletcher for 6 years, so you can go out and buy that jersey.
Well, John,
and feel comfortable.
Yeah, let me. So you have the breakdown on the website 973ESPN.com a little bit deeper into this. Can they get? A lot of times we see these big time numbers and say, well, don't read into the $100 million because they can get out of that. Is this deal like that? I mean, what are the penalties if they decide at the end of next year, you know what? Much like they did with Owens, where they just said, all right, or where he thought they were going to do that, I guess. Are there penalties for trying to get out early?
Yeah, there'd be significant. The first 2 years would be over $20 million cap hits, so there's no way they could possibly get rid of Fletcher Cox until year 3 at the earliest, probably 4 more likely. But, I mean, this is a very good player. I can't imagine any scenario where the Philadelphia Eagles would want to move on from Fletcher Cox in 2 years. Even if the worst thing happened this year and say you tear an ACL or you have a season-ending injury, that's not going to cause you to rethink it. You just want him back, you want him rehab, and you want him ready to go for the next season. So this is a guy who is too good of a player to fall completely off the edge of the earth in that way. So you don't have to worry about the first 3. Back 3 years are what you have to worry if things go south, not only for the team, but for Fletcher himself. And when you get to years 5 and 6, the Eagles will be able to move on if they have to, but obviously they wouldn't want to.
Mm-hmm. So do you then have any issues with that guaranteed number? I mean, are you okay with, when you look at this deal, do you say, you know what, this is a good deal for both sides, everyone, I have no problem with it?
Yeah, I have no problem with it. I knew it was going to come between 50 and 60, and it was a little bit more than that, but if you take the sort of the fully guaranteed money, it's right where I thought it was going to be. And a lot of it, as I said, has to do with timing. It's just Fletcher's turn, and that's where the contracts are for high-level defensive linemen right now. And you'll kind of see that because he'll be the measuring stick. So I think people who are concerned about it, when you see Short sign, when you see Miller sign, when you see Wilkerson sign, you're going to see similar numbers, and you're going to start feeling a little bit better about it. But to those people, I also say it's not your money; it's Jeffrey Lawrence's money. So if he's fine with it, and he certainly is, I don't see the problem. This is, as I said, this is the Eagles' best football player, and you have to pay talent to keep talent, and that's what happened here.
Yeah, well, you just said he's the Eagles' best football player, and I've always mentioned, John, when you and I do the show on Tuesdays. We will mention a lot about, do the Eagles have a player on defense that you need to game plan for? That when you pop the tape in, you set up your game plan for that week with that guy in mind. Did he just become that guy in the NFL circles? Is Fletcher Cox now a guy that other teams better game plan for?
Yeah, I mean, I think, honestly, he became that guy when the Eagles hired Jim Schwartz.
Right. That's what I mean. Right. Like, did they make the decision that him coupled in and that goes a little bit back to the question with Jim Schwartz. Did they make that decision that position in this defense and this particular player that has now become from a Pro Bowler to an All-Pro guy? Like, that seems to be what their mindset is, for me anyway, that they decided that this guy's a guy who's on another level now.
Yeah, I agree with that. And a lot of it has to do with the fact that he's not going to two-gap anymore. He's going to be a one-gap attacking player. And just by the nature of those two schemes, it's much more difficult to be an impact player if you're sort of read and reacting. That's what a two-gap defense forces you to do as a defensive lineman. Whereas a one-gap, you can just get up the field and attack, and that's what people like Sue have done so well, and Ainsworth back in the day, and Marcel Darius, and that's what people project. So I think it's not the contract, it's the fact that Jim Schwartz and his scheme is here, and they're going to use Fletcher Cox the way he was used in college, the way he was used when he first got here under Andy Reid, and that's his natural position, and that's a position he can dominate out.
All right, John, we'll wrap up with quick NFL news here that I thought I want to get your opinion on and what this means for Dallas moving forward. Some breaking news today. It looks like Ezekiel Elliott might carry more of a load than we thought because Darren McFadden broke his elbow. He could be out for a significant amount of time. They said he might not be ready to the end of training camp, and who knows if he'll be ready for the start of the season there. But Dallas making them their pick of Ezekiel Elliott look a little bit better. Not that it wasn't a good pick anyway, but when you draft a guy number 4, but it now looks like he might have an opportunity to really be the featured back out there.
Yeah, I mean, I think that was the plan anyway. Obviously, you take a running back at number 4 overall. They want to recreate what they had with DeMarco Murray back in 2014 when he had over 1,800 yards, and they were a run-first team. And you saw the difference. I mean, a lot of it had to do with injuries, obviously, in Dallas, but they went from a 12-4 team to a 4-12 team. And I think at Tony Romo's age, with his injury history, you want to make things as easy as possible on him, and the way you do that is get back to having that dominant running game. So I think Zeke was always plan A. He was going to be they were going to try to force feed him and get him on the field week 1. Obviously, it becomes more likely with McFadden, which is interesting. He dropped his phone. That's how he broke his elbow trying to save his phone. So it's a tough injury. You'd like to have the depth, but it's clear by what Dallas did that they wanted Ezekiel Elliott to be the guy. So I don't think that part of it changes.
At JF McMullen for more on the NFL offseason. Of course, you can check him out at todayspigskin.com for all of his national NFL coverage, and 97.3 ESPN.com for all of his Eagles coverage. Thank you, John.
Hey, thanks, guys.